Aiden Fui. Aiden Fui was 14 years old in 2021 when he committed an evil and despicable act in the woods of St. Johns County, Florida. He convinced 13-year-old Tristan Bailey to go with him into the forest. Tristan was never seen alive again. Aiden and Tristan were classmates at Patriot Oaks Academy. Tristan was a cheerleader, one of 5 children, and liked by everyone. On the other hand, Aiden Shawn Fui was described by people who knew him as a weirdo. He frequently talked about how much fun it would be to kill somebody. He even admitted to his girlfriend that he had plans to drag a random person into the woods and stab them multiple times. On the evening of May 9th, 2021, Aiden convinced Tristan to leave her home and meet at a mutual friend's house. Video footage from a residential security camera showed Aiden and Tristan walking near the wooded area where her body was later discovered. About 2 hours after they entered the area, Aiden was seen on video walking back by himself, carrying his shoes in his hands. When police discovered Tristan in the woods, she was in gruesome shape. The autopsy revealed that she had been stabbed 114 times. The medical examiner said that 49 of her wounds were defensive, meaning she struggled through nearly 50 stabbings. Police quickly mounted heaps of evidence against Aiden. They discovered his buck knife in the pond near Tristan's body, with traces of Tristan's scalp on it. Bloody clothing was discovered in his room, along with blood and dirt in the bathroom sink. Investigators discovered a notebook in his room with graphic and disturbing drawings. When interviewed, Aiden's teenage girlfriend said he sometimes heard voices in his head when he was angry. Everyone described him as having a fascination with knives. He frequently carried knives with him and even pretended to slit his friends' throats. Aiden's mother, Crystal Smith, was also arrested during the investigation. Video surveillance at their home showed her taking a pair of jeans from her son's room and scrubbing them vigorously. Crystal was arrested on a charge of tampering with evidence. It's a felony punishable by up to 5 years in prison. It was clear that Crystal found the bloody clothes and tried to scrub away the evidence. Despite being 14, Aiden was charged with first-degree murder as an adult. On March 24, 2023, Judge R. Lee Smith sentenced Aiden to life in prison. The judge said that the crime had no motive whatsoever. It was a heinous thing to do, atrocious and cruel. The judge said Tristan Bailey suffered a horrifying death at the hands of someone she trusted. At the sentencing hearing, Tristan's sister dropped 114 heart-shaped stones into a jar to symbolize each of the stab wounds Tristan suffered. After Aiden was first arrested, he posted a disturbing Snapchat in the back of a police car, laughing after the murder. But he wasn't laughing at his hearing. He sat in an orange prison uniform with dead, unblinking eyes as the judge handed down the sentence. Before we continue, I wanted to give a big shout out to Papergirl and HighSoul5039. Thanks so much for watching and supporting OE. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe and join the family. Shawn D Jackson. Nathan Potter was a 21-year-old film student at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee in 2009. On July 6th, Nathan was walking near his apartment in River West when he was approached by a pair of strangers. 18-year-old Shawn D Jackson shot and killed Nathan Porter because Nathan didn't have any money. 12 hours later, in the middle of the afternoon, Shawn D shot someone else in an unrelated crime. Shawn D and his accomplice Derek J. Thomas set out that night to shoot and rob people. They waited in the dark until they saw someone walking alone who looked vulnerable. Thomas acted as the lookout, while Shawn D Jackson approached Nathan Potter and shot him in the chest with a .45 caliber bullet. Then, having just committed murder for nothing, the pair ran to Thomas's house. There they hung out and played video games. At the sentencing hearing, Shawn D Jackson was given life in prison without the possibility to ever be released. That sentence means Shawn D will die in prison without stepping foot outside again. But what happened during the proceeding was shocking. Shawn D kept turning in his chair and leering at the family of the victim, who was shattered by the death of Nathan Potter. His leering became so bad that 3 deputies and a police detective had to restrain the murderer. He had been laughing, smiling, smirking, and whispering curses at the Potters while the judge tried to hand down his sentence. While deputies struggled to subdue Shawn D, who showed zero remorse or guilt for his actions, his family erupted in the background. The family of the killer started yelling obscenities at the family of the victim. In the shocking footage, one woman can be heard yelling at the Potters, "I hate you all." Another woman yelled, God's the judge. Shawn D Jackson was pepper sprayed and tackled while Nathan Potter's family cried hysterically. Then he was dragged out of the courtroom before the judge had finished fully explaining his sentence. Candra Rea Cook. 17-year-old Candra Rea Cook and her boyfriend Kendrick J. Bass cooked up a plan for carjacking people and getting away with it. Cook believed she could lure random men from dating and social apps to remote places. Then her boyfriend could ambush them with a gun and steal their car. It seemed like an easy way to get free cars. Cook used the app Meet Me to convince Perry Nida from South Dayton to go to a strange place on March 22, 2017. Cook promised Perry some weed and a casual hookup, but things went awry, starting with Perry bringing his friend along, Emmanuel Purcell. When the two men arrived at the meeting spot in a pickup truck, Cook got into the vehicle with them. Moments later, her boyfriend jumped in the back seat. He was wearing a ski mask and a hoodie, armed with a handgun that he had equipped with a laser. He aimed the gun at Perry and told him to get out of the truck. But Emmanuel wasn't going to be easily robbed. He attacked Kendrick, who pulled the trigger twice during the struggle. One of the bullets hit Emmanuel in the abdomen. Fearing the worst, the would-be carjackers fled. Perry rushed his friend to the hospital as quickly as he could, and luckily Emmanuel survived the bullet wound. According to Officer Ann Carrizales of the Meadows Police Department in Texas, the couple didn't learn their lesson after the close call. Within 24 hours of shooting Emmanuel Purcell, they tried to scam again. Candra Rea Cook and her boyfriend tricked another stranger into meeting them and successfully stole his car. A few days later, Candra was arrested and charged with carjacking. Her boyfriend managed to avoid being captured by law enforcement for nearly a year. Cook worked with a public defender to negotiate a plea deal, thinking she would get a lower sentence. The attorney told the teenager's mom that she would likely get nothing except probation. The teenager ultimately entered a plea of no contest to all charges except conspiracy. The defense attorney was very wrong. Cook and her mother were shocked when the judge passed down a sentence of 20 years at the Volusia County Justice Center on June 27, 2017. When the sentence was read out, it was absolute anarchy in the courtroom. Candra Rea's mother was sobbing and howling, crying so hard that she passed out. Candra Rea was also weeping as she turned from the judge and looked toward her mother, who was in absolute hysterics. It was such a dramatic scene that Candra Rea was taken immediately from the courtroom and her mom couldn't get off the floor. In the aftermath, the family hired a new defense lawyer. The initial plea was withdrawn and the sentence was struck down. In 2018, Cook's 20 years was reduced to 11, but she was given 20 years of probation. Do you think the judge was too harsh on Candra Rea? Let me know in the comments below and hit subscribe while you're at it. Dant Wright. Jordan Klee was living with his mother Karen in Ann Arbor in 2016 when the unimaginable happened. Jordan's father had died only 4 months after he was born. The only real father figure he had in his life was his grandfather. Karen did best for her kid, and her efforts seemed to be paying off. Jordan was athletic, he liked biking and skiing. He was one of the best football players in his age group at school. He won awards and was very successful academically at a young age. Good grades, extracurriculars. Jordan was on his way to making a nice life for himself. He had already decided to embark upon an engineering career because of his skills in math and physics. The plan was to study at Michigan University, where he could hopefully join the football team as well. Sadly, Jordan never made it to his graduation. On October 4, 2016, a maintenance worker at an apartment complex in Pine Lake Village discovered a young man on the ground outside in a pool of blood. It was Jordan Klee, killed by a gunshot wound to the center of his forehead. The police investigation that followed identified 3 teenagers involved in the brutal execution-style slaying of Jordan Klee: Dant Wright, Jamarius Ellison, and Delreno Gracie. The 3 young men were accused of trying to steal controlled substances and/or shoes and clothes from the victim. It was an armed robbery that went horribly wrong. It isn't clear what exactly they were trying to take from Jordan, but prosecutors suggested they wanted whatever he had on his person at the time. Ellison pleaded guilty to armed robbery and second-degree murder. So did Gracie. But it was Dant Wright who really captured public attention when he smiled and laughed during his hearing. It was a shocking scene in the Washtenaw County courtroom in Michigan. The teenager admitted to murdering Jordan Klee. Then, as Jordan's devastated family read their impact statements, Dant sat smiling at them as if if he thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. On behalf of the grieving mother, one family member read a statement saying, "I've lost my only child, my son, my baby, my friend." And as this was being read aloud, 17-year-old Dant Wright was on the verge of bursting out laughing. After, when Dant was allowed to address the court, all he said was, "I'll be home soon." Circuit Court Judge David Swartz didn't like his attitude one bit. The judge wanted Dant to go to trial, where he could get sentenced to life in prison. But the family of the victim asked that the case not go to trial. They just wanted to move forward. So, the judge could only sentence Dant to a maximum of 50 years in prison. Dant likely won't get out of jail until he is almost 70. TJ Lane. On February 27, 2012, TJ Lane walked into school with his uncle's .22 caliber pistol. He was also armed with a knife. He fired the weapon 10 times inside the cafeteria of Ohio's Chardon High School. Demetrius Hewlin and Daniel Parmenter, both 16, were killed in a hail of bullets. So was 17-year-old Russell King Jr. Nicholas Valkak was injured, paralyzed from the waist down by a bullet. Nate Mueller took a bullet to the ear, and Joy Rickers was also hit, but not seriously injured. TJ Lane was not a student at the school. He was in the area waiting for a bus to travel to the alternative high school he attended, called Lake Academy. His sister, Sadie Lane, was the one who attended Chardon High. On the day of the attack, she was present in the cafeteria. Initially, the case went to juvenile court because TJ was only a teenager. Evidence was presented that TJ suffered from psychosis and hallucinations. He was deluded by strange fantasies and was mentally disturbed. But the court judge decided TJ wasn't mentally incompetent at all. The judge decided he was competent enough to stand trial as an adult. During the investigation, TJ never admitted why he went into the school and started shooting. He admitted that he did it, but claimed he never really knew why. When he was arrested on the day of the attack, TJ told Deputy John Bilicic that he was aiming for their heads because he didn't want them to suffer. On the day, TJ had prepared meticulously for the attack. He had a shirt with the word "killer" written on it that he made just for the occasion. He told investigators he wasn't depressed, he just felt like being a killer. TJ's lawyers tried to get him off on a plea of insanity, but they later dropped the defense, and TJ Lane pleaded guilty to 3 counts of aggravated murder. He also pleaded guilty to 2 counts of attempted aggravated murder and 1 count of felonious assault. Because he was only 17, it wasn't possible for him to receive the death penalty, but he did get life in prison. During the sentencing, TJ acted like a psychopath. It was tragic for the victims' families who had to sit there in the courtroom while TJ Lane gave them the middle finger. After he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, TJ was given the opportunity to address the court. He smirked, unbuttoned his shirt, and revealed something horrifying. TJ was wearing a plain white t-shirt with the word "killer" scrawled across it in big letters. It was almost identical to the shirt that he wore on the day of the shooting. It was a taunt to the victims' families. TJ rocked back and forth in his chair, leering and flipping the bird. Many of the victims' relatives stood on the podium and wished TJ an extremely slow death. Judge David Fui was so disgusted that he gave TJ 3 consecutive life sentences. While the sentence was passed down, TJ smiled. In 2014, TJ Lane escaped from prison. TJ fled the Allen Oakwood Correctional Institution with 2 other men at around 7:40 p.m. on a Thursday night. The institution is home to roughly 1,600 inmates and 257 security officers. TJ and his accomplices escaped by building a makeshift ladder and climbing over the wall where they knew one of the security cameras was broken. They used old pieces of cabinets to construct a ladder nearly 14 feet tall. This allowed them to get onto the roof of the building, jump over the wall, and run across the field. The other escapists were Lindsay Bruce, a convicted murderer, and Clifford Opperud, a robber. Both were captured almost immediately after and have since been transferred to a maximum security prison. TJ tasted freedom for 6 hours, then was found hiding outside a church only 100 yards away from the jail. Dylan Schumacher. In 2013, Dylan Schumacher was only 16 years old when he committed murder. On the night of March 19th, Dylan was babysitting his girlfriend's 2 sons while she was busy working a shift at the restaurant where she worked. This happened in Springville, New York State. By the time the night was over, one of the sons was dead and Dylan Schumacher was in handcuffs. The little boy's name was Austin Smith, just 23 months old. Dylan, barely a teenager himself, became enraged during the night while he was babysitting for Ashley's Smith. Austin would not stop crying. The baby, 2-month-old Christopher, had laid down and was asleep. Dylan was worried that Austin's constant screaming would wake the infant. He snapped, lost control, and attacked Austin. Within minutes, Austin had suffered fatal brain bleeding. When Ashley got home from work later that night, only one of her kids was alive. Dylan was immediately arrested. He went on trial in 2014 for the murder of Austin Smith. During his testimony, Dylan claimed he put a pillow over Austin's head to stop him from crying, but he had never intended to take Austin's life. Dylan claimed he only tried to silence him with a pillow. However, that's not what happened. Based on the evidence, Dylan didn't use a pillow, he used his fists. Neither Ashley nor the judge believed Dylan's side of the story. They also didn't believe how regretful he acted during the sentencing. Dylan was crying so hard that his eyes were bloodshot and red. His voice trembled, tears streamed down his face. He kept insisting that it was an accident and that he would switch places with Austin if he could. Dylan's defense attorney said Dylan was helpless to control his anger and frustration because he was only 16 at the time of the murder. Judge Boller wasn't buying it for a second. He nearly had an outburst of his own. "What's stopping him from doing this again?" the judge cried, and handed down a maximum sentence of 25 years in prison. Judge Boller called Dylan a manipulative liar. The worst part of it for Dylan was that he had admitted his plan for crocodile tears to his mother. The judge read a transcript of a phone call between Dylan and his mom while Dylan was in the holding cell after his arrest. In the phone call, Dylan said, "I'm a 16-year-old boy. Probably all I'll have to do is cry in front of a jury, and they'll feel sorry for me." Well, the jury didn't. Dylan's fake tears dried up very quickly after the judge made it clear he wasn't going to be lenient. Dylan will come up for parole in 2031, but that doesn't mean he'll make it out of prison. Out of all of these reactions, which one shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching. Remember to hit subscribe if you haven't yet, and come back soon for more shocking videos. Bye.